Ambassador Zephyr's crystalline form shimmered with satisfaction as he observed the tactical display floating before the assembled Council of Galactic Unity. The holographic representation showed the final moments of Earth's orbital defense grid as it crumbled under the combined might of 7 alien fleets. Each flash of light represented another human station going dark, another piece of their pathetic resistance being swept aside like debris in a solar wind. "The human homeworld burns," announced High Commander Vorthak, his multiple eyes gleaming with predatory satisfaction. The reptilian Saurian's voice carried across the vast chamber, echoing off the crystalline walls of the Council Station positioned safely in neutral space. Their orbital platforms have been reduced to scrap metal. Their moon base has been silenced. Even now, our ground forces are establishing control over their major population centers. The Council chamber erupted in celebration. Representatives from dozens of species clicked, chittered, roared, and harmonized in their respective expressions of joy. The Zephyrian's crystals rang like bells. The insectoid hive speakers buzzed in harmonic unison, and the gaseous nebulae swirled in complex patterns of bioluminescent triumph. For too long, humanity had been a thorn in the side of galactic civilization. These upstart mammals from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star had somehow managed to spread their influence across nearly a dozen systems in less than 2 centuries. Their expansion had been aggressive, their technology surprisingly adaptable, and their refusal to submit to proper galactic authority had become increasingly problematic. "The human disease has finally been excised," declared matriarch Sela, her serpentine form coiled elegantly around her floating throne. The Naga Empress had been particularly vocal about the human problem, citing their disruption of established trade routes and their irritating habit of defending weaker species from more powerful predators. Their colonies have surrendered or been pacified. Their military vessels lie burning in the void. The galaxy can now return to its proper order. Ambassador Zephyr accessed the compiled intelligence reports through his neural interface. The humans had fought with their characteristic stubbornness, but they had been hopelessly outmatched. 7 major species had contributed to this coordinated assault, bringing together the largest combined fleet in galactic history. Over 3,000 capital ships, supported by tens of thousands of fighters and support vessels, had converged on human space simultaneously. The strategy had been simple and effective. Rather than allow the humans time to mount their usual desperate defense, the Council had struck at every major human world at once. Earth, their homeworld and command center, had been the primary target, but simultaneous attacks on Mars, Europa, Titan, and the outer colony worlds had prevented any coordinated response. Their resistance was adequate, admitted General Krex, the massive Bruton warrior whose species specialized in ground combat. His tusked features showed signs of grudging respect. These humans fight with an intensity that borders on madness. Even when clearly defeated, they continue to resist. Our casualties were higher than projected, but acceptable given the strategic value of this operation. The holographic display shifted to show ground combat footage from various human worlds. The images were disturbing even to the war-hardened Council members. Human soldiers had fought to the last, often using their own bodies as weapons when their equipment failed. Civilian populations had taken up arms with improvised weapons, forcing the invasion forces to engage in brutal urban warfare. Their civilian population showed remarkable cohesion, reported Intelligence Director Yith, the spider-like arachnoid clicking her mandibles thoughtfully. Unlike most species, the humans did not surrender when their military was defeated. They attempted to continue resistance through guerrilla warfare and sabotage operations. Our psychological warfare specialists had to implement extreme measures to break their morale. Ambassador Zephyr noted this with interest. Most species, when faced with overwhelming military defeat, would surrender and accept incorporation into the galactic order. The humans' continued resistance, even after their formal military had been destroyed, was both troubling and fascinating. It spoke to a level of species-wide determination that was rare in the galaxy. "What of their leadership?" asked Counselor Threx, representing the Aquatic Deepwater Collective. His bio-suit gurgled softly as he spoke, maintaining the high-pressure liquid environment his species required. "Captured or eliminated," High Commander Vorthak reported with satisfaction. Their president and military commanders were taken into custody when their capital fell. Their so-called United Earth government has been dissolved. We have installed provisional governors on each major world, backed by adequate garrison forces. The celebration continued, but Ambassador Zephyr found himself studying the tactical reports with growing unease. Something about the human defeat felt too complete. In his long experience with galactic politics, species that expanded as aggressively as the humans typically had contingency plans. The fact that they'd been caught so completely off guard was unusual. "What are their deep space assets?" he inquired, his crystalline voice cutting through the celebratory noise. Intelligence reports suggested the humans had been constructing long-range exploration and colonization vessels. Have these been accounted for? The chamber fell silent as all attention focused on the intelligence director. Yitha's multiple eyes flickered with uncertainty. Our intelligence assets were focused on military targets and major population centers. Deep space monitoring was limited in scope. We prioritized the immediate threat to galactic stability. High Commander Vorthak waved a dismissive claw. Exploration vessels are irrelevant. Even if some humans escaped into the void, they lack the industrial capacity to threaten galactic civilization. Without their homeworld and major colonies, they are reduced to scattered refugees. Besides, added Matriarch Sela, her forked tongue tasting the air with satisfaction, where could they run? The galaxy belongs to the Council now. Any human survivors will be hunted down and dealt with appropriately. Their species will serve as an example to other upstart civilizations that might consider challenging the established order. The holographic display updated with casualty reports and resource assessments. The numbers were staggering. Earth's population of nearly 12 billion had been reduced by almost half during the fighting and subsequent occupation. The industrial infrastructure of the human colonies had been either captured intact or systematically destroyed to prevent future resistance. Their technology will prove useful, noted Research Director Quill, the avian skyborn's feathers ruffled with scientific excitement. Human adaptive engineering shows promise, particularly their approach to modular ship design and resource extraction in hostile environments. Once properly studied and refined by our scientists, these innovations will benefit the entire galactic community. Ambassador Zephyr accessed the deeper intelligence files, cross-referencing human expansion patterns with known stellar cartography. Something nagged at his crystalline consciousness, a pattern that didn't quite fit the narrative of complete human defeat. The humans had been remarkably systematic in their expansion, establishing supply lines and communication networks across vast distances. Such a methodical approach suggested long-term planning and contingency preparations. "Has anyone confirmed the status of the human research stations in the Outer Rim?" he asked. Intelligence reports from before the invasion suggested they had established several deep space facilities for advanced research projects. The uncomfortable silence that followed his question was answer enough. The Council's intelligence apparatus, impressive as it was, had been focused on the immediate military threat posed by human expansion. The possibility that humanity might have backup plans or hidden assets had been considered unlikely given their apparent technological limitations. "The humans are primitives," scoffed General Krex. "Their fastest ships barely achieve half the velocity of our slowest transports. Even if they have hidden assets in deep space, they lack the capability to mount any meaningful resistance. We control every major hyperspace route in this sector of the galaxy." Ambassador Zephyr's crystalline form pulsed with uncertainty. The general's assessment was technically correct based on known human capabilities, but something about the situation felt incomplete. In his centuries of diplomatic service, he had learned to trust his instincts about seemingly defeated enemies. The celebration around him continued unabated. Representatives from member species were already discussing the division of human territories and resources. The mineral-rich asteroids of the Sol system would provide valuable raw materials. The agricultural worlds of the human colonies would help feed the growing populations of established galactic civilizations. Even the human survivors would serve useful purposes as laborers and subjects for scientific study. "The age of human defiance is over," proclaimed High Commander Vorthak, raising his ceremonial weapon in triumph. "Let this victory serve as a warning to any species that might consider challenging the Council's authority. The galaxy has room for only one civilization, and that civilization is ours." The assembled council members roared their approval, each species expressing their satisfaction in their own way. The Zephyrian's crystals sang in harmonic resonance. The hive speakers buzzed with collective joy, and the nebulae swirled in patterns of luminous celebration. Yet even as he participated in the victory ceremony, Ambassador Zephyr couldn't shake his growing unease. The humans had proven surprisingly resourceful in their brief time on the galactic stage. They had adapted technologies from multiple species, formed unexpected alliances with weaker civilizations, and shown a remarkable talent for improvisation under pressure. Could such a species really be defeated so completely and so easily? The tactical display updated once more, showing the final statistics of the campaign. Total time from initial assault to complete victory, 72 standard hours. Human military resistance had collapsed faster than even the most optimistic projections had suggested. Their vaunted orbital defenses had proven ineffective against coordinated assault, their fleet had been scattered and destroyed piecemeal, and their ground forces had been overwhelmed by superior numbers and technology. Begin preparations for the integration protocols, ordered Matriarch Sela. The surviving human populations will need to be processed and assigned to appropriate labor classifications. Their worlds will require terraforming to accommodate our member species. This process must be completed efficiently to prevent any possibility of organized resistance. The council session continued for several more hours, with detailed discussions about resource allocation, territorial assignments, and the establishment of permanent garrison forces throughout former human space. The systematic approach to the post-victory occupation demonstrated the Council's experience in subjugating rebellious species. As the session concluded and the various representatives began departing for their respective homeworlds, Ambassador Zephyr remained in the chamber, studying the tactical displays with growing concern. The data was comprehensive, but somehow felt incomplete. There were gaps in the intelligence picture, small anomalies that suggested the human defeat might not be as total as it appeared. He accessed his personal communication array and began composing a series of discrete inquiries to intelligence assets throughout the galaxy. If the humans had indeed been planning contingencies, evidence of those plans might still exist in the vast databases of galactic civilization. The chamber gradually emptied as the victory celebration moved to more informal venues throughout the station. Ambassador Zephyr remained alone with his doubts, the holographic displays casting eerie shadows across his crystalline form. In the depths of space, beyond the reach of Council sensors, and far from the celebrating fleets, something stirred in the cosmic void. Ancient detection arrays, thought to be derelict mining equipment, suddenly began transmitting encoded signals across impossible distances. The transmissions were brief, untraceable, and utterly incomprehensible to anyone not equipped with the proper decryption protocols. But Ambassador Zephyr would not learn of these signals for some time yet. For now, he could only study the data before him and try to understand why complete victory felt so much like the calm before a storm. Captain Elena Vasquez floated in the command center of the research station Prometheus, watching the last encrypted transmissions from Earth fade into static. The massive installation drifted silently in the Oort cloud, nearly a light year from Sol, invisible to most sensors and officially listed as a defunct mining operation in the galactic databases. Around her, the command crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces grim but determined. The holographic displays showed the systematic destruction of everything they had called home. Earth burned. Mars was occupied. The outer colonies had fallen one by one to the overwhelming might of the Council fleet. Final transmission from Luna Base has ceased, reported Lieutenant Commander Chun, his voice carefully controlled. All major communications networks are now under Council control. Elena nodded, her expression betraying none of the fury that burned in her chest. They had known this day would come. For over 50 years, since humanity's first contact with galactic civilization, the brightest minds of Earth had been preparing for exactly this scenario. Execute Protocol, Lazarus, she ordered, her words carrying across the station's communication network. All departments begin Phase 1 implementation immediately. Throughout the massive structure, thousands of personnel began moving with practiced precision. The Prometheus was far larger than any Council intelligence estimates had suggested, a feat of engineering that had taken decades to complete in absolute secrecy. Hidden manufacturing facilities came online, dormant systems awakened, and vast storage bays began disgorging their carefully hoarded contents. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the station's chief scientist, appeared on the primary communication screen from Deep Lab 7. Behind her, Elena could see glimpses of technologies that officially didn't exist, projects that had been classified at levels beyond even military clearance. Lazarus systems are responding within normal parameters, Dr. Mitchell reported. We're beginning power-up sequences for all primary research arrays. The quantum foundries will be online within 6 hours. Elena allowed herself a small smile. The quantum foundries were humanity's greatest secret, reverse-engineered from fragments of Council technology obtained through decades of careful espionage and scientific analysis. Unlike anything in the official human arsenal, these devices could manufacture materials at the molecular level, creating substances with properties that defied conventional physics. What's the status of our fleet assets? Elena asked. Commander Torres, her tactical officer, consulted his displays before responding. Phantom Squadron reports all ships dark and undetected. The Council fleets are maintaining standard patrol patterns around the major worlds. They have no idea we exist. Phantom Squadron represented the culmination of human military engineering. 50 vessels that had never appeared on any official registry, built in hidden shipyards using technologies the Council believed were beyond human capability. Each ship was equipped with stealth systems that rendered them effectively invisible to standard sensors, powered by drives that could achieve velocities the Council thought impossible for human engineering. Elena walked to the primary strategic display, a three-dimensional map showing the entire local galactic region. Red markers indicated Council fleet positions, while blue markers showed the locations of hidden human assets scattered throughout space. The Council saw only the red markers, believing they had achieved total victory. They couldn't see the vast network of hidden bases, research stations, and military assets that humanity had been building for decades. Begin activating the sleeper cells, she ordered. It's time for the galaxy to learn what humans are really capable of. Across the galaxy, carefully placed agents began receiving their activation signals. These weren't traditional spies, but humans who had undergone radical genetic and cybernetic modification to pass as members of other species. Some had been in place for over 20 years, rising through the ranks of Council military and political organizations. Agent Designation Phoenix 7 was currently serving as a navigation officer aboard the Saurian flagship Dominator. To his reptilian crewmates, he appeared to be a Saurian named Vector, complete with scales, multiple eyes, and the proper pheromone signatures. In reality, he was Dr. James Patterson, a xenobiologist who had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment in human intelligence. As the victory celebration continued around him, Phoenix 7 quietly accessed the ship's communication array and began downloading tactical data. Fleet positions, shield frequencies, weapon specifications, command protocols, information that would prove invaluable in the coming conflict. On the Council station where the victory celebration was reaching its peak, Agent Designation Ghost 3 moved through the corridors with the fluid grace of her adopted nebulae form. To anyone watching, she appeared to be a standard atmospheric maintenance technician, her gaseous body drifting through the station's environmental systems. In reality, she was Colonel Maria Santos, and she was planting quantum viruses throughout the station's computer network. The viruses were a masterpiece of human programming, designed to remain completely dormant until activated by a specific signal. Once triggered, they would simultaneously disable shields, weapons, life support, and communications throughout the station. The Council's technological superiority meant nothing if their systems could be turned against them. Back on Prometheus, Elena reviewed the intelligence reports flooding in from across the galaxy. The activation of the Sleeper Network was providing an unprecedented view of Council military capabilities and dispositions. More importantly, it was revealing weaknesses that could be exploited. The Council made a critical error, observed Dr. Mitchell as she joined Elena at the strategic display. They assumed our defeat would be like every other species they've conquered. They're treating this as a simple occupation rather than the beginning of a new phase of warfare. Elena nodded. Most species, when faced with the overwhelming might of Council fleets, would surrender and accept integration into galactic civilization. The Council's experience with thousands of subjugated worlds had created predictable patterns of behavior. They expected the surviving human populations to become demoralized and compliant. They had no understanding of what humans were truly capable of when pushed beyond their limits. Activation of Asset Group Delta is complete. Reported Communications Officer Park. All deep space manufacturing platforms are now online and beginning production runs. Estimated completion of Phase 1 objectives in 72 hours. Asset Group Delta consisted of 12 massive manufacturing stations hidden throughout the outer regions of human space. Each facility was capable of producing advanced military hardware using the quantum foundry technology. More importantly, they were designed to be completely self-sufficient, capable of gathering raw materials from asteroids and cosmic debris. Elena activated her personal communication array and opened a channel to Admiral Chun aboard the stealth carrier Nemesis. The elderly Chinese officer appeared on her screen, his expression stern but confident. "Admiral, what's the status of your task force?" "All ships report ready for Phase 2 operations," Admiral Chun replied. "We've been monitoring Council fleet movements from our position in the Kuiper Belt. Their formation is exactly as our intelligence predicted. They're maintaining standard occupation protocols, which makes them vulnerable to our planned strikes." The Nemesis was the flagship of humanity's secret fleet, a vessel that incorporated technologies the Council didn't even know existed. Its stealth systems were based on principles of quantum mechanics that allowed it to phase partially out of normal space-time, making it undetectable to any known sensor technology. How long until the Council realizes their victory isn't as complete as they believe? Elena asked. Dr. Mitchell consulted her tactical projections. Based on current intelligence, they're planning to begin integration protocols within 1 standard week. They'll start with population relocations and industrial reorganization. Once they begin trying to process our people through their systems, they'll discover the discrepancies. The discrepancies she referred to were significant. Council estimates of human population and industrial capacity were based on deliberately falsified data that humanity had been feeding into galactic databases for decades. The true scope of human civilization was far larger than the Council suspected, with hidden colonies and populations scattered throughout space. Execute Phase 2 in 48 hours, Elena decided. That will give us maximum surprise while their forces are still dispersed and overconfident. Phase 2 would begin the real war. The systematic destruction of Earth and the major colonies had been a tragedy of unimaginable proportions, but it had also served a strategic purpose. The Council now believed the human threat had been eliminated, making them vulnerable to retaliation they couldn't see coming. Elena reviewed the target list that had been prepared years in advance. Council military installations, supply bases, communication arrays, and command centers throughout the galaxy. The simultaneous assault would be coordinated with surgical precision, designed to cripple the Council's ability to respond effectively. "Ma'am," interrupted Lieutenant Davis from the sensor station. "We're detecting unusual activity in the Proxima Centauri system. Multiple Council ships are converging on the area." Elena frowned. Proxima Centauri was the location of humanity's first interstellar colony, a small research outpost that had been abandoned during the initial Council assault. What could possibly interest them about an empty system? "Bring up the long-range scanners," she ordered. "Let's see what has their attention." The tactical display shifted to show the Proxima system in detail. 7 Council vessels were approaching the planet, their sensor arrays active and scanning intensively. As Elena watched, she realized what they were looking for. "They're searching for survivors," she said grimly. Council intelligence must have realized their casualty estimates don't match the actual population numbers. Dr. Mitchell nodded. "If they start conducting detailed forensic analysis of the destroyed colonies, they'll eventually realize the scope of their intelligence failures." Elena made a quick decision. "Signal Admiral Chun. We're moving up the timeline for Phase 2. We can't afford to let them discover the truth about our hidden assets." The communication array crackled as Admiral Chen's image reappeared. "Admiral, new orders. Begin Phase 2 operations immediately. Target priority is the Council intelligence gathering fleet in the Proxima system." "Understood, Captain. Phantom Squadron is already moving to intercept. We'll handle the intelligence threat while the main fleet prepares for the primary assault." Elena watched as Admiral Chen's transmission ended, then turned her attention back to the strategic display. Across the galaxy, hidden human assets were moving into position. Stealth ships that had never appeared on any registry began powering up their exotic drive systems. manufacturing stations hidden in asteroid fields, and nebulae started producing the weapons of war that would change the balance of galactic power. The Council celebrated their victory, believing they had crushed the human threat. In their arrogance, they had failed to understand the true nature of their enemy. Humans didn't simply surrender when defeated. They adapted, evolved, and found new ways to fight. All stations report ready for combat operations, announced Commander Torres. Phase 2 assets are in position and awaiting your command. Elena looked out at the stars through the command center's massive viewport. Somewhere out there, Earth still burned under Council occupation. Billions of her people were dead or enslaved. The civilization that had given birth to humanity's dreams of the stars had been reduced to smoldering ruins. But the Council had made one crucial mistake. They had left survivors. Signal all units, Elena commanded, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's fury. Phase 2 is authorized. Show them what happens when you corner a species that refuses to die. Throughout the galaxy, human agents and assets began moving. The real war was about to begin. Admiral Chun floated in the zero-gravity command center of the Nemesis as his stealth task force approached the Proxima Centauri system. Around him, his crew worked with deadly precision, their movements economical and purposeful. They had trained for this moment for over a decade, preparing for a war that most of the galaxy believed had already ended. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported Commander Liu from the sensor station. 7 Council vessels in standard search formation. Estimated composition: 3 heavy cruisers, 2 destroyers, 1 intelligence ship, and 1 command vessel. Chen studied the tactical display with the eye of a veteran strategist. The Council fleet was arranged in a pattern optimized for systematic scanning of planetary surfaces and orbital zones. They were looking for evidence of human survivors or hidden installations, which meant Council intelligence was beginning to suspect their victory hadn't been as complete as initially believed. Range to target, he asked. 40,000 kilometers and closing. Their sensors are focused on the planetary surface. No indication they've detected our approach. That was expected. The Nemesis and her escort ships were equipped with quantum phase shifters that rendered them effectively invisible to conventional sensors. The technology was based on principles that humanity had discovered through decades of careful study of exotic matter, research that the Council had dismissed as impossible for such a primitive species. Signal the squadron. Maintain stealth approach until we reach optimal firing range. Phantom Leader, prepare for synchronized strike. On his secondary screen, Chen could see Captain Rodriguez aboard the stealth destroyer Wraith, acknowledging the order. The 12 ships of Phantom Squadron had been positioned throughout the system for the past 6 hours, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Admiral, interrupted Intelligence Officer Park, we're receiving transmissions from the Council intelligence ship. They're reporting population discrepancies to their fleet command. Chen's expression hardened. The Council was beginning to realize that the numbers didn't add up. Official records suggested the Proxima colony had contained nearly 50,000 settlers, but the debris and casualty evidence pointed to a much smaller population. If they continued their investigation, they would eventually discover the truth about humanity's hidden assets. Accelerate our approach, he ordered. We need to silence that intelligence ship before they can transmit their findings to the main fleet. The Nemesis glided through space with unnatural silence, her exotic matter hull absorbing sensor radiation rather than reflecting it. To the Council sensors, the area of space containing Chen's task force appeared to be empty vacuum, indistinguishable from the cosmic background. Targeting solutions acquired on all enemy vessels, reported Weapons Officer Kim. Phase cannons charged and ready. Quantum torpedoes armed. Chen reviewed the attack plan one final time. The simultaneous strike would need to destroy all 7 Council ships before any of them could transmit a warning to the main fleet. The margin for error was non-existent. If even one ship escaped, the element of surprise would be lost. All units, this is Admiral Chun. Remember, we're not just fighting for revenge. We're fighting to ensure that humanity survives to see another day. The galaxy thinks we're defeated, broken, finished. Today we begin to prove them wrong. He paused, watching as his ships moved into final attack positions around the unsuspecting Council fleet. In the depths of space, 12 human vessels prepared to announce humanity's return to the galactic stage. All units, execute Operation Phoenix Dawn. Fire when ready. The vacuum of space erupted in lethal brilliance as Phantom Squadron opened fire. Phase cannons lanced through the void with beams of coherent energy that existed partially outside normal space-time, allowing them to pass through most forms of defensive shielding. Quantum torpedoes materialized inside enemy hulls, their exotic matter warheads detonating with forces that conventional physics couldn't adequately describe. The Council intelligence ship was the first to die, its hull torn apart by a direct hit from the Nemesis's main cannon. The vessel's computers and communication arrays were vaporized before they could transmit so much as a distress signal. Target destroyed, reported Commander Liu. No transmission detected. Around the system, the other Council ships died with equal efficiency. The heavy cruiser Dominator took 3 quantum torpedo hits amidships, its massive bulk splitting apart as exotic matter reactions consumed its superstructure. The destroyers lasted slightly longer, their smaller size allowing them to attempt evasive maneuvers, but they too fell to the precisely coordinated assault. The entire engagement lasted less than 90 seconds. All enemy vessels destroyed, Chen announced. Begin recovery operations for intelligence materials. I want everything, computer cores, personal communications, navigation logs, the works. As his ships moved to collect the debris, Chen opened a secure communication channel to Captain Vasquez on Prometheus Station. The encrypted signal would take several minutes to reach her, but the message was worth the delay. Captain, Phase 2 Alpha is complete. Council intelligence threat has been neutralized. Beginning Phase 2 Beta operations immediately. While Phantom Squadron collected intelligence from the destroyed Council fleet, similar operations were beginning across the galaxy. Agent Ghost 3 activated her quantum viruses aboard the Council command station, watching with satisfaction as the massive facility's systems began experiencing random malfunctions. Emergency lights flickered throughout the corridors as life support systems developed mysterious inefficiencies. Shield generators cycled on and off unpredictably. Most critically, the communication arrays began introducing subtle errors into outgoing transmissions, errors that would accumulate over time until the station's communications became completely unreliable. Technical difficulties. Ghost 3 reported to the Nebulae Maintenance Supervisor, her gaseous form pulsing with false concern. The quantum resonance matrices are showing instabilities. I estimate we'll need at least 48 hours to trace and correct all the problems. The supervisor, elderly nebulae named Cirrus, swirled with irritation. This is most inconvenient. The High Command expects regular reports on the human pacification operations. Any delays in communication could be interpreted as negligence. Ghost 3 had counted on exactly that reaction. The Council's bureaucratic nature meant that any technical problems would be treated as administrative issues rather than potential sabotage. By the time they realized what was happening, it would be far too late. Meanwhile, on the Saurian flagship Dominator, Agent Phoenix 7 was implementing his own part of the operation. His access to the ship's navigation systems allowed him to introduce subtle errors into the fleet's positioning data. The changes were minor, adjustments of a few thousand kilometers here and there, but they would prove crucial when the time came for Phase 3. Navigation update complete. Phoenix 7 reported to his commanding officer, a massive Saurian named Captain Vortex. All ships in the occupation fleet are properly positioned according to the new patrol routes. Captain Vortex examined the holographic display showing the fleet formation. The ships appear to be in standard defensive positions around Earth and the other occupied worlds. He couldn't see the subtle vulnerabilities that Phoenix 7 had introduced, gaps in coverage that would allow human strike forces to approach undetected. Excellent work, Navigator. The Admiral will be pleased to know that our forces are properly deployed to prevent any human counterattack. Phoenix 7 acknowledged the praise with appropriate Saurian body language, while internally calculating how many of these ships would survive the next phase of operations. The answer was none. Back in the Prometheus Command Center, Captain Vasquez received Admiral Chen's confirmation of the successful strike. The first blood had been drawn, and the Council remained unaware that they were under attack. Phase 2 Beta is authorized, she announced. Begin Quantum Foundry Production Run 7. Target completion in 18 hours. Throughout the hidden manufacturing stations, exotic matter began flowing through molecular assembly systems at incredible rates. The quantum foundries were producing weapons that had never before existed in the galaxy, devices that incorporated principles of physics that most species considered theoretical impossibilities. Dr. Mitchell monitored the production reports from her laboratory deep within Prometheus. The weapons being created were based on research that had begun over 30 years ago, when humanity first encountered council technology and realized they would eventually need to defend themselves against overwhelming technological superiority. The singularity projectors are within specifications, she reported. Each device should be capable of creating a localized gravitational anomaly with an effective range of approximately 50,000 kilometers. The singularity projectors were among humanity's most devastating weapons, capable of crushing entire fleets by generating artificial black holes that would exist for precisely calculated periods before evaporating. The mathematics involved had required the combined efforts of humanity's greatest physicists, working in absolute secrecy for decades. What about the temporal disruptors? Elena asked. More complex, but functional. Each disruptor can create a time dilation field that will effectively freeze targets in temporal stasis for up to 6 minutes. The power requirements are enormous, but the quantum foundries can produce the necessary exotic matter batteries. Elena nodded with satisfaction. These weapons would give humanity the technological edge they needed to face the Council's numerical superiority. More importantly, they were based on principles that Council scientists would find completely incomprehensible, making it impossible for them to develop countermeasures. Commander Torres, what's the status of our sleeper fleet? Torres consulted his tactical displays. All 60 ships of Battle Group Alpha are approaching their assigned targets. Estimated time to engagement range is 6 hours. Battle Group Beta will be in position 12 hours after that. The sleeper fleet consisted of vessels that had been hidden throughout human space for over a decade, their crews living in carefully maintained suspended animation until the day they would be needed. Each ship was equipped with the most advanced stealth and weapons systems humanity could produce, making them invisible to Council sensors and capable of devastating surprise attacks. Elena reviewed the target assignments once more. Battle Group Alpha would hit the Council's major supply depots and communication relays, crippling their ability to coordinate a response. Battle Group Beta would target the reserve fleets that the Council kept in their home systems, preventing them from reinforcing their occupation forces. Signal Admiral Chun, she ordered. Authorize him to begin Phase 2 Gamma. The Council needs to learn that cornering humanity was the greatest mistake in galactic history. In the Proxima system, Admiral Chun received the authorization signal and smiled grimly. Phase 2 Gamma would introduce the Council to humanity's true capabilities. No longer would they face conventional weapons and tactics. The time for subtlety was over. All units, prepare for quantum jump to target Beta 7, he announced. We're going to pay a visit to the Council's main supply depot at Regulus Prime. The quantum jump was another technology that officially didn't exist in humanity's arsenal. Unlike conventional faster-than-light travel, which moved ships through hyperspace, the quantum jump allowed vessels to instantaneously relocate by briefly phasing into parallel dimensions where the laws of physics were slightly different. Jump calculations complete, reported Navigation Officer Santos. All ships report ready for dimensional transition. Chen looked out at the stars one final time before giving the order that would change the course of galactic history. Execute quantum jump. Let's show the Council what happens when they underestimate the human spirit. Space twisted around the Phantom Squadron as 12 ships vanished from normal reality, reappearing instantaneously 8 light-years away in orbit around Regulus Prime. The Council supply depot, completely unprepared for an attack that should have been impossible, presented perfect targets for humanity's revenge. The second phase of humanity's return to the stars was about to begin. High Commander Vorthak stood before the emergency session of the Council of Galactic Unity, his usually composed demeanor shattered by the reports flooding in from across the galaxy. The celebration of humanity's defeat had turned into a nightmare of impossible attacks and vanishing fleets. Regulus Prime has gone silent, he announced, his voice carrying barely controlled panic. The entire supply depot, along with its defensive fleet of 37 vessels, has simply disappeared. No distress signals, no evidence of battle, nothing. The Council chamber buzzed with confused voices as representatives from dozens of species tried to comprehend the impossible. Regulus Prime had been one of the most heavily defended installations in Council space, protected by overlapping shield arrays and patrolled by experienced fleet commanders. The idea that it could be destroyed without a trace defied all military logic. Ambassador Zephyr's crystalline form pulsed with urgent light patterns. This is the 7th major installation to be lost in the past 18 hours. The pattern suggests coordinated strikes by an unknown force with capabilities far beyond anything in our databases. Matriarch Sela coiled herself tighter around her floating throne, her serpentine features twisted with frustration. Unknown force? There are no unknown forces in this galaxy. We have maintained complete surveillance of all spacefaring civilizations for over 1,000 years. Intelligence Director Yith clicked her mandibles nervously as she accessed the latest reports. The attacks are being carried out by ships that do not appear on any sensors until the moment they fire. Our surviving witnesses describe vessels that seem to materialize from empty space, deliver devastating attacks using unknown weapons, then vanish again. General Krex slammed his massive fist against his command podium, the impact reverberating through the chamber. Witnesses? What witnesses? Every installation that has been attacked has been completely destroyed. There should be no survivors. That's part of the pattern, General, Yith replied, her multiple eyes reflecting genuine fear. The attackers are leaving exactly enough survivors to report what happened, but not enough to mount any effective resistance. It's almost as if they want us to know we're being hunted. High Commander Vorthak activated the chamber's main holographic display, showing a galactic map marked with red indicators where attacks had occurred. The pattern was disturbing in its systematic precision. Supply depots, communication relays, isolated patrol fleets. All the vulnerable points that supported the Council's massive military machine. The attackers are demonstrating detailed knowledge of our logistics networks, he observed. They know exactly which targets to hit for maximum strategic impact while avoiding our main battle fleets. Ambassador Zephyr studied the attack pattern with growing unease. This level of intelligence gathering would require years of preparation and deep penetration of our security systems. The coordination between multiple strike forces suggests a sophisticated command structure. But that's impossible, protested Counselor Threx, his bio suit gurgling with agitation. We monitored all human communications throughout their expansion period. Their technology was generations behind ours. They had no capability for the kind of operations we're witnessing. Matriarch Sela's forked tongue tasted the air, sampling the fear pheromones that were beginning to permeate the chamber. Perhaps we underestimated human capabilities. Their expansion was remarkably rapid for such a supposedly primitive species. Underestimated? Roared General Krex. We obliterated their homeworld. We destroyed their colonies. Their entire fleet was scattered and broken. How could they possibly mount attacks of this magnitude? The uncomfortable silence that followed was interrupted by an urgent communication from Council Defense Command. Admiral Threx's image appeared on the emergency channel, his normally composed features showing signs of extreme stress. High Command, we're receiving reports of massive system failures throughout the occupied territories. Ships are reporting navigation errors, communication breakdowns, and weapon malfunctions. It's as if our technology is turning against us. Intelligence Director Yith's mandibles clicked rapidly as she processed this new information. Are you suggesting sabotage, Admiral? I'm suggesting something far worse, Admiral Threx replied grimly. Our technical analysis indicates that these aren't random failures. Someone has introduced viral programs into our computer networks, programs sophisticated enough to remain dormant for extended periods before activating simultaneously. The implications struck the Council members like a physical blow. Their technological superiority had been the foundation of galactic dominance for millennia. The idea that their own systems could be compromised was unthinkable. High Commander Vorthak's voice was barely controlled as he asked, "How extensive is the compromise?" We're still assessing the damage, but preliminary reports suggest the viral contamination extends throughout our entire communication network. Every major installation, every ship, every administrative system may be affected. Ambassador Zephyr's crystalline form rang with resonant tones of alarm. If our communications are compromised, we're fighting blind. The attackers could be coordinating their strikes using our own networks. Before anyone could respond, the chamber's communication system activated without authorization. The main holographic display flickered, and was replaced by the image of a human female in military uniform. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with an intensity that made even the most hardened council members uncomfortable. "Greetings, Council of Galactic Unity," Captain Elena Vasquez said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Human Resistance Fleet. I believe we need to talk." The council chamber erupted in chaos as representatives shouted in their various languages, demanding explanations for the impossible security breach. High Commander Vorthak raised his ceremonial weapon for silence, his multiple eyes fixed on the human image. "This is impossible," he said. "This chamber is protected by quantum encryption barriers. No unauthorized transmission can penetrate our security systems." Elena smiled, the expression holding no warmth whatsoever. "Your security systems are based on mathematics we taught you through our primitive communications during first contact. Did you really think we wouldn't keep a few back doors for emergencies?" Matriarch Sela's serpentine form writhed with fury. "Humanity has been defeated. Your worlds burn under our occupation. How dare you threaten the rightful rulers of this galaxy?" "Threaten?" Elena's laugh was cold as vacuum. "Honored Matriarch, we're not threatening you. We're informing you of the new reality. The war you think you won? It hasn't even started yet." General Krex stepped forward, his massive bulk intimidating even through the hologram. "Human, you speak of resistance, but your species is broken. We have seen your shattered fleets, your burning cities. What few survivors remain are scattered and helpless." Elena's expression hardened. "General, you've seen exactly what we wanted you to see. Every casualty report, every population count, every assessment of our capabilities, all carefully manufactured to give you the illusion of total victory. Did you really think a species capable of interstellar expansion would keep all their eggs in one basket?" The tactical display changed, showing new information that made the council members gasp in collective shock. Hundreds of contacts appeared throughout the galaxy, representing human assets that had been completely invisible to council intelligence. Hidden bases, stealth fleets, manufacturing stations, and population centers scattered across dozens of systems. The humans you destroyed on Earth, and the major colonies represented perhaps 20% of our actual population, Elena continued. The rest have been living in deep space installations for decades, preparing for exactly this scenario. We knew that contact with galactic civilization would eventually lead to conflict. We spent 50 years getting ready. Intelligence Director Yitha's voice was barely a whisper. 50 years? But you've only had interstellar capability for 2 centuries. Wrong again, Elena replied. We've had interstellar capability for over 3 centuries. The expansion you observed was carefully controlled to hide our true technological development. Every innovation we shared with galactic civilization was already obsolete by our standards. High Commander Vorthak stared at the tactical display, trying to comprehend the scope of what the humans had accomplished. The attacks on our installations are being carried out by fleets that have never appeared in your intelligence reports, Elena confirmed. Ships built with technologies we reverse-engineered from your own systems, then improved beyond your comprehension. You taught us your weaknesses through decades of peaceful contact. Ambassador Zephyr's crystalline form dimmed as he realized the magnitude of the Council's strategic failure. The intelligence gathering, the sabotage, the precision of your attacks. How many of our people are actually humans in disguise? Elena's smile returned, colder than before. Enough. We've had agents in your governments, your militaries, your research institutions for over 20 years. Every piece of technology you consider secret, we've studied and improved. Every strategic plan you've made, we've known about in advance. Counselor Threx's biosuit systems fluctuated wildly as he struggled to process the implications. But the genetic scanners, the pheromone analysis, the biological identification systems are all based on principles we understand better than you do, Elena interrupted. When you can manipulate matter at the quantum level, disguising the biological signatures of a few thousand volunteers becomes trivial. The council chamber fell silent as the representatives began to understand the true scope of humanity's deception. They had not conquered a primitive species. They had walked into a trap prepared by an enemy who understood them better than they understood themselves. What do you want? High Commander Vorthak finally asked. Justice, Elena replied simply. You invaded our space without provocation. You destroyed our cities and murdered billions of innocent civilians. You celebrated our defeat and planned to enslave our survivors. Now you will face the consequences of those choices. Matriarch Sela's voice dripped with venom. You cannot defeat the combined might of galactic civilization. We have thousands of worlds, billions of ships, resources beyond your comprehension. Had Elena corrected. As of this moment, approximately 60% of your fleet has been rendered inoperable by our viral programs. Your communication networks are compromised. Your supply lines are being systematically destroyed. And our real fleet hasn't even revealed itself yet. The holographic display changed again, showing images that defied Council understanding. Ships the size of moons moved through space with impossible grace, their hulls gleaming with unknown alloys and bristling with weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. The Exodus fleet, Elena announced. 12,000 vessels carrying the survivors of Earth and our hidden colonies, built using technologies that your scientists would consider violations of natural law. They've been traveling through dark space for the past 6 months, and they're almost here. General Krex's voice was hoarse with disbelief. 12,000 ships? Our intelligence estimated your total fleet at fewer than 300 vessels. Your intelligence was designed to reach that conclusion, Elena replied. We've been manipulating your perception of human capabilities since first contact. Every trade agreement, every technology exchange, every diplomatic negotiation was part of a larger strategy to prepare for this moment. High Commander Vorthak felt the weight of absolute defeat settling upon his shoulders. The species he had dismissed as primitive had outwitted the combined intelligence resources of galactic civilization. They had turned the Council's own technology against them and revealed the true scope of their capabilities only when it was too late to respond effectively. The Exodus fleet will arrive in approximately 6 hours, Elena continued. When it does, the galaxy will learn what happens when you underestimate the human capacity for survival, adaptation, and revenge. You wanted to rule the stars. Instead, you've awakened something that should have remained sleeping. The transmission ended, leaving the Council members staring at empty space where Elena's image had been. Around the chamber, the silence stretched until it became almost physically painful. Ambassador Zephyr was the first to speak. We need to contact all fleet commanders immediately. Full military mobilization, maximum alert status. With what communications? Intelligence Director Yith asked bitterly. If their viral programs have compromised our networks as extensively as they claim, we may not even be able to coordinate a defense. High Commander Vorthak looked at the faces around him and saw his own despair reflected in their expressions. In their arrogance, they had awakened humanity's wrath. Now, they would learn the price of underestimating a species that refused to surrender. In the depths of space, the Exodus fleet continued its approach toward the heart of Council civilization, bringing with it technologies and weapons that would reshape the balance of galactic power forever. Admiral Marcus Kane stood on the observation deck of the flagship Excalibur, watching reality itself bend and twist as the Exodus fleet emerged from the quantum void. 12,000 vessels materialized from impossible dimensions, their exotic matter hulls gleaming with energies that made space itself ripple with gravitational waves. The ships defied every principle of engineering that the Council understood. Some vessels were kilometers long, but appear to have no mass, existing partially outside normal spacetime. Others were relatively small, but generated gravitational fields normally associated with stellar masses. The largest ships seemed to contain entire star systems within their hulls, pocket dimensions where human civilization had been rebuilt and refined. Fleet emergence complete, reported Fleet Captain Sarah Chun from her position at the tactical station. All 12,000 vessels report operational status. Quantum drive systems are stable across the formation. Kane nodded, his weathered face showing the strain of commanding humanity's greatest military undertaking. At 73 years old, he had volunteered to undergo life extension procedures that would allow him to see this mission through to its conclusion. The mathematics involved in coordinating a fleet of this magnitude through quantum space had required computational resources that pushed even human technology to its limits. Signal the fleet. Imprimant Formation Omega. Begin deployment of the Stellar Engineering Corps. Throughout the massive formation, specialized vessels began moving into position around nearby star systems. The Stellar Engineering Corps represented humanity's mastery of forces that the Council considered mythical. These ships could manipulate stellar fusion processes, redirect gravitational fields, and even create artificial stars from accumulated cosmic debris. Admiral, Interrupted Communications Officer Park, we're receiving transmission requests from every major Council installation within 50 light-years. They're demanding to know our intentions. Kane smiled grimly. Tell them they'll understand our intentions soon enough. Begin Phase 1 of Operation Nemesis. Operation Nemesis was the culmination of 50 years of strategic planning, a coordinated assault designed to demonstrate humanity's technological superiority while minimizing unnecessary casualties. The first phase would target the Council's ability to coordinate military responses, followed by systematic destruction of their industrial capacity. On the bridge of the battlecruiser Prometheus, Captain Elena Vasquez coordinated with her fellow commanders as the fleet prepared to reshape galactic civilization. The hidden manufacturing stations that had been building this fleet for decades had incorporated technologies that pushed the boundaries of physical law. Temporal displacement generators are online, she reported. We have 6 ships equipped with chronoton projectors ready to implement time-lock protocols on Council fleet formations. The chronoton projectors were among humanity's most devastating weapons, capable of trapping entire enemy fleets in temporal loops where they would experience the same few seconds of time repeatedly until their crews either surrendered or went insane. The technology was based on principles discovered through humanity's study of quantum mechanics and dimensional theory. Admiral Kane reviewed the tactical situation as reports flowed in from across the galaxy. Council forces were attempting to organize a response, but their compromised communication systems and the viral programs introduced by human agents were preventing effective coordination. Status report on the sleeper cell activations? He asked. Intelligence Director Martinez consulted her displays. 97% of our embedded agents have successfully activated. Council military command structures are experiencing systematic failures as their own personnel begin working against them. Most Council ships are now operating with skeleton crews as their human crew members reveal their true identities. The scope of humanity's infiltration had been staggering. For over 20 years, genetically modified humans had served aboard Council vessels, worked in Council research facilities, and held positions throughout Council governments. When the activation signal was transmitted, they simultaneously revealed themselves and began sabotaging their installations from within. Sir, called Sensor Officer Kim, we're detecting massive fleet movement from the Council home systems. It appears they're attempting to concentrate their remaining forces for a final defensive action. Kane studied the incoming data with interest. The Council was implementing a strategy that made sense from their perspective, gathering their scattered forces into a unified fleet that could match the human Exodus fleet in raw numbers. What they didn't understand was that numbers had become irrelevant. Signal Battle Group Alpha. Prepare to demonstrate why conventional military thinking is obsolete. Authorized deployment of the Dimensional Artillery. The Dimensional Artillery was humanity's most exotic weapon system, capable of firing projectiles that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions. The weapons could hit targets that were supposedly protected by any known defensive technology, as the projectiles would simply materialize inside enemy hulls from parallel realities. Light years away, the Council's massed fleet prepared for what they believed would be the decisive battle of the war. High Commander Vorthak stood on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Nearly 8,000 ships from dozens of species had gathered to face the human threat. All vessels report ready for combat, announced Admiral Krex from his command ship. We have overwhelming numerical superiority. Whatever technology the humans possess, they cannot defeat the combined might of galactic civilization. But even as he spoke those words, space around the Council fleet began to distort. Reality twisted as human ships phased into normal space-time, appearing inside the Council formation as if the laws of physics had simply been rewritten. Impossible, gasped Admiral Krex. They're inside our defensive perimeter. How did they penetrate our sensor networks? The answer was that humanity had moved beyond the need for conventional space travel. Their ships could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, allowing them to bypass traditional defensive strategies by attacking from directions that didn't technically exist. High Commander Vorthak watched in horror as the human ships opened fire with weapons that defied all understanding. Energy beams that curved through hyperspace struck targets from impossible angles. Projectiles materialized inside enemy hulls without passing through the intervening space. Most disturbing of all, some Council ships simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but somehow edited out of reality entirely. All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessels. Vorthak ordered desperately. Use everything we have. The Council fleet unleashed a barrage of energy that should have been capable of sterilizing entire star systems. Plasma cannons, particle beams, gravitational weapons, and exotic matter warheads filled the space between the fleets with lethal energies. But the human ships seemed to absorb the attacks without taking damage. Their hulls were constructed from materials that existed partially outside normal space-time, making them effectively immune to conventional weapons. The energy from Council attacks was simply redirected into parallel dimensions where it dissipated harmlessly. Admiral Kane watched the one-sided battle from his command position, feeling no satisfaction from the destruction being visited upon his enemies. Signal the Council fleet. Offer them terms for surrender. The communication array transmitted humanity's terms directly to High Commander Vorthak's flagship. Kane's image appeared on the Council ship's main screen, his expression stern but not unmerciful. High Commander, your fleet is defeated. Your ships cannot harm ours, while we can destroy you at will. I'm offering you the chance to surrender with honor rather than face annihilation. Vorthak's multiple eyes blazed with fury and desperation. What terms do you offer, human? Complete withdrawal of Council forces from human space. Reparations for the destruction of our worlds and the murder of our civilians. Establishment of human autonomy within the galactic community. And, most importantly, guarantees that such an unprovoked attack will never happen again. And if we refuse? Vorthak asked, though he already knew the answer. Kane's expression hardened. Then, we will demonstrate why cornering humanity was the greatest strategic error in galactic history. The choice is yours, High Commander. Around the Council flagship, human vessels continued their systematic destruction of the massed fleet. Ships that had seemed invincible only hours earlier were being reduced to cosmic debris by weapons that operated according to principles the Council couldn't begin to understand. Sir, interrupted Admiral Krex on the communication channel, we're losing ships faster than we can coordinate responses. Our weapons are useless against their technology. Request permission to withdraw remaining forces. High Commander Vorthak stared at the tactical display, showing the destruction of everything he had built his career upon. The Council's technological superiority, the foundation of their galactic dominance, had been revealed as an illusion. They were facing an enemy that had transcended conventional warfare entirely. Signal the human fleet, he said finally, his voice heavy with defeat. We'd accept your terms. The fighting stopped, as if a switch had been thrown. Human ships ceased their attacks and began withdrawing to safe distances, allowing the surviving Council vessels to assess their losses. Of the 8,000 ships that had begun the battle, fewer than 3,000 remained operational. Admiral Kane's image reappeared on the Council communication channels, addressing not just the defeated fleet, but every major installation throughout galactic civilization. Citizens of the galaxy, he began, his words being transmitted to billions of beings across thousands of worlds. Today marks the end of an era of unopposed Council domination. Humanity has returned from the edge of extinction to demonstrate that no species, no matter how powerful, has the right to subjugate others through force. On countless worlds, populations that had lived under Council rule for generations listened in amazement as Kane continued his address. We do not seek to replace the Council as galactic overlords. We seek only to ensure that all species have the right to determine their own destinies. The age of might making right is over. A new era of cooperation and mutual respect begins today. High Commander Vorthak found himself staring at readings that should have been impossible. Human ships were not just moving through space, but creating new space, expanding the very fabric of reality to accommodate their growing fleet. Some vessels were manufacturing entire star systems, using matter compilation techniques to transform cosmic debris into habitable worlds. They're not just more advanced than we thought, he whispered to himself. They're more advanced than we believed was possible. Ambassador Zephyr materialized on the flagship's communication array, his crystalline form dimmed with exhaustion. The Council is requesting immediate negotiations. Every member species is demanding explanations for how humanity achieved such capabilities without our knowledge. Kane nodded. Tell them we're prepared to begin talks immediately. But first, there's something else they need to understand. The holographic display shifted to show images from throughout human space. On Earth, the ruins left by the Council invasion were being rebuilt using technologies that transform matter at the quantum level. Dead worlds were being restored to life through techniques that redirected stellar energy and atmospheric conditions. What you're seeing is not revenge, Kane explained. It's resurrection. Every world you destroyed, every life you took, every crime you committed against humanity, we have the power to undo it all. We choose not to because we believe in justice, not vengeance. The message was clear to every being watching the transmission. Humanity possessed the power to reshape reality itself, yet they were choosing restraint over retribution. The species that the Council had attempted to destroy had evolved beyond the need for conquest through force. The galaxy stands at a crossroads, Kane continued. We can build a future based on cooperation and mutual advancement, or we can continue the old patterns of dominance and subjugation. Choose wisely. You will not get another chance. As the transmission ended, representatives throughout galactic civilization began the process of completely re-evaluating everything they thought they knew about power, technology, and the nature of interstellar relations. Humanity had emerged from the void, not just as survivors, but as beings who had transcended the limitations that bound other species. The Council's age of dominance was over. The human age of the galaxy was about to begin.